Joe Habeeb, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Russell, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Joe Habeeb is well known within the YouTube boxing community for his passionate insight and deep historical knowledge on the sport of boxing. He's been an analyst for Rope-A-Dope Radio, Wingy Boxing, The Boxing Voice. He's got his own YouTube channel, Beating the Odds with Beeb. Real pleasure having him on the show. Beeb, when did you first get into boxing, and how do you know so damn much? You're not Max Kellerman level, I don't think, but you're damn good.
Thank you so much. My father used to always watch boxing, and the first fight that I actually watched live that I somewhat understood was Larry Holmes versus Ken Norton back in 1978. So I just started watching boxing, and then when it was on HBO, then I started watching all those fights. I started going to gyms. I started training a little bit. Did a little bit of fighting as a Golden Gloves novice. Obviously not a world beater, because if I was, I wouldn't be, having a regular job like I do now. But I've always just loved the sport. I always call boxing physical chess. I always thought it to be so much more than just two guys going in there and beating each other up. There's so much, planning and strategy that goes into it. And you have to be somewhat smart to be a good boxer as well. It's not all just about physicality. And to me, I admired boxers so much because it takes such bravery to get in that ring and to just put it all on the line and to go in there knowing that you may not leave the same way you went in. And I've always admired that in a man that took up the sport of boxing. I think that's it's a special person that can do that, in my opinion.
How about MMA? Do you have the same respect for MMA?
I have loads of respect for MMA fighters. I would consider myself a casual MMA fan, just like you have casual boxing fans. I'm definitely a casual MMA fan. I have to take my hat off to Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan, he's a great analyst because he's actually explaining a lot of the things that's going on during an MMA fight, or, when he's doing the UFC telecasts on pay-per-view. And I think, he's helped me a lot to understand the sport. And I got to give credit to that, because I'm not a master of understanding that sport. I can't really break down an MMA fight like I can a boxing match, but I admire it. I watch it. So I'm going to say something that may make boxing fanatics mad, but sometimes I do buy the pay-per-views. So I find the sport very interesting.
Yeah, what do you think of the boxing pay-per-views? I mean, for the most part, they're the shits, right?
Well, the thing about me is I'm hooked. I'm sick. I buy them all, and I just can't stop buying them all. I've said many times that, hey, I'm not going to buy this one. I'm not going to buy that one. And then I just start getting I start jonesing. As it gets closer and closer and closer, it'll be like 2 hours away, 3 hours away. Oh, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to buy it. And then, lo and behold, the addict in me buys it. I break down and buy them all. So I can't sit there and criticize them because I buy them all. Obviously, not all fights should be on pay-per-view, in my opinion. And I think that, what Al Heyman's doing with PBC, I know a lot of people don't like it, but at least, we're getting the opportunity to see more boxing without having to spend pay-per-view dollars on it. So in that regard, I like PBC.
Okay, so you mentioned PBC. You were, or maybe you still are, a part of the Boxing Voice. We'll talk about that. Many have said that the Boxing Voice is a fan site, or they've sold out, that Ness is somehow in Al Heyman's back pocket.
I do not believe so, and I am not part of the Boxing Voice anymore. But I will say that I do believe that Nestor Gibbs does love the sport of boxing, and, he doesn't just talk about PBC fights. If there's a good fight put on by any promoter, he will talk it up. So I disagree with the notion that the Boxing Voice or Nestor Gibbs is a PBC fanboy. I totally disagree with that. I've disagreed with Ness on a lot of things, but I will say that he does love the sport of boxing, and he does work very hard, being involved in the sport, does whatever he can to promote it, and he's out there, whether the fight's small or big, he's out there. So I got to give him credit for that.
Without throwing anybody under the bus, do you think you were the most knowledgeable person that was a part of the team of The Boxing Voice?
I think I was the best analyst, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. That was my strength. I thought Ness was an outstanding host, great personality, sometimes an instigator, but, it makes the show fun to some. But I don't think that analyzing the fights was his strength, and admittedly, I think he would tell you that if you asked him. But, credit to him, he took something that a lot of people were doing before him, put his own spin on it, and he made it better. I mean, I've always told Ness, it's not who does something first, it's who does it best. People remember who's doing it the best. They don't care who started it. So, that's what I think about the Boxing Voice. I think that they've taken something and they've added their own spin. Nestor's added his own spin on it, taken it to another level. In terms of the production, in terms of the interaction, in terms of just, putting it out there to the masses. A lot of casual fans feel as though they have a voice by calling into the Boxing Voice, whereas if they were to call into other podcasts, they don't feel at home or as home as they would on the Boxing Voice, because it's more or less just normal. The normal average Joe calls into the Boxing Voice, who may not know a lot about the sport, but at least he can talk about it and not feel embarrassed. So in that regard, I give the Boxing Voice credit. But when you look at someone like Steve Kim, I think he's been around a long time, and he's a lot more substantive than I would say Nestor Gibbs is, to be honest with you. And he has a more I think advanced caller calling into that show the next round as you would as the Boxing Voice. And I say that with no disrespect to anyone. But that's just, to me, that it is what it is.
Steve Kim's been on my show twice.
Yes.
I've disagreed with Steve Kim and been more right than wrong when I've disagreed with him. But I will agree, he is great. He comes from maxboxing.com.
Correct.
So Ness's full-time gig in life is now The Boxing Voice.
Correct.
We all know that YouTube pays money on the monetization, and there's a rough calculation with how many views you get and how much money you make.
Correct.
Was Ness, or is Ness, paying his analysts and the co-hosts on the show?
I wasn't getting paid. I was getting paid when I was the editor, and I was helping out with the store. I helped create the store initially, and James Meyer took over that. He does not pay people for participating in the show. No, to my knowledge, he does not. But he will pay if you do like editorial work. I know he's helped people with cameras and stuff in the past. If you cover fights for him, he's purchased people cameras. But the hosts do not make money on the show. No.
Why aren't you on the show anymore?
Well, I made a couple of videos on it, and I'm going to be 100% honest. Ness did have a meeting with us, Mario and myself, and he was very adamant about having us on all the time. He didn't want people missing shows. So I did miss 2 Thursday shows in a row. I texted him.
But again, he wasn't paying you, so it's not...
Absolutely not. He wasn't paying me, no.
It's not like this was work that you've missed.
No, I considered myself a contributor. He offered me the editor's job again, and I turned it down because it just wasn't financially feasible for me. And, I'm not going to obviously reveal the financial terms to that. But to cut it, to cut a long story short, Nestor was upset that I missed 2 Thursday shows in a row. He was also upset that I had my own YouTube channel because he felt as though I was competing with him. And he also did not want me putting any breakdowns of fights on my YouTube channel where I offered wagering advice, because he wanted me to do that exclusively on the Boxing Voice radio show. But as you said, Russell, he wasn't paying me for exclusivity. So I don't understand why he would demand that of me if he was not paying me. Now, if he was to say, Beeb, you know what, I'll give you such and such amount to contribute just to my channel alone, and I was happy with the financial terms, then I would not do videos on my YouTube channel that were, related to beating the odds with Beeb the type of segment that I did for him. So, I've been breaking down fights. I've been on YouTube since 2009. He started watching me. So a lot of things that, he's doing now, I think that I helped him out a little bit with that in terms of inspiring him. Because I was the one that helped him get started initially. And I was doing this Beating the Odds of Beeb segment. I didn't call it Beating the Odds of Beeb. I had my channel called the Beeb Boxing Report, and I did similar breakdowns where I would offer, betting advice or how I would bet this specific fight or that specific fight. So it wasn't like, this was Nestor Gibbs's brainchild, but it really upset me that someone who contacted me back in 2012 and someone who was calling into my show since 2009 when I was on Rope-a-Dope Radio, going to kind of try to pass it off to the public like I took something from him, when I'm not going to say he took anything from me, because I gave, my advice and knowledge that I had that he asked at the time. I gave it to him willingly. So for him to say that I took something from him, which is basically the same thing that I had given to him beforehand, it was just crazy. And it really threw me for a loop, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing on that conversation. Oh, you stole my YouTube channel. My friend, you started doing this stuff 3 years after I did. How could I steal anything from you? So that really, really upset me a lot, and I couldn't believe it. I know I'm long-winded and I can go on for days, but I do stop talking once in a while.
Did you watch you watch them all. I know. You've got a sickness. You're not well.
No, I'm not well.
So I imagine you saw the Triple G versus Dominic Wade fight.
Absolutely. I certainly did.
How can anyone say, I don't know what your opinion is, to be honest, about Triple G, but how can anyone say he's great when he's only fought essentially bums and the odd B-plus fighter? It may not be his fault, but it's still the truth. That's his resume.
Well, yeah, with all due respect, I don't use that word bum when I talk about fighters, but fair enough.
Okay, when I saw Dominic Wade, I thought this guy's a fucking bum. He didn't come into the fight in shape. Maybe he was in short notice.
And I respect your opinion. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing you for your opinion, but this is what I have said about Triple G, and I made a video about Triple G, and I explained to him. The name of the video is called Golovkin, An Honest Look. And, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, fighters are going to be judged by the fighters of old. So the fighters of old laid the blueprint. So they basically defined what greatness is. And a lot of the great fighters, once they cleaned out a division, or once they were in a situation where they could not get any big fights in their respective division that they were campaigning in, they moved up. And I think, and I've been saying this for about the last 2 years, that I think Triple G should have moved up to 168, because I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to clean out this division. I don't think the guys will want to fight him. I don't think he's going to ever get that Canelo fight. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I agree with you 110%. When I watch Triple G fight and I give him the eye test and I look at the things he's doing in there, he looks like a great fighter, but he does not have the resume of a great fighter. And being a great fighter encompasses a lot of things. It's about accomplishments. It's about being in big fights. And it's about, challenging yourself. And there was an opportunity when Triple G could have challenged himself honestly against Andre Ward. And it seemed to me as though Andre Ward was, ready, willing, and able to fight Triple G. For whatever reason, the management team of Triple G decided, hey, no, we're going to stay at 160, and we're going to clean out a division. So in the process of attempting to clean out this division, you have a lot of these Dominic Wades popping up, these Willie Monroes, with all due respect, popping up. David Lemieux, solid fighter, but, he's shown a lot of weaknesses and a lot of shortcomings, and definitely a solid fighter, but not an exceptional fighter. And so this is the route that he's going to go through, to clean out this division. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's not really entertaining for me. It's not entertaining for you. And we leave, leave ourselves at the end of the day with a bad taste in our mouth because we're seeing what we saw last Saturday night. So, yeah, I agree with you 110%. I think Triple G looks like a great fighter, has the potential to be a great fighter, but if he continues to go down this route, he's 35 years old, and he doesn't get a big fight soon, it's going to be too late for him. He's going to be too old, and we may not see the best Triple G at that point in time when he does have that big fight in front of him, and that's going to be unfortunate.
So is Triple G being carefully marketed only to fight the kind of competition that makes him look good? Or are people really avoiding him because there's no value in fighting Triple G?
I think people at middleweight are avoiding him, but I think James DeGale would fight him in a heartbeat. I still think that if they said to Andre Ward, hey, we'll fight you at 170, even though Andre Ward's at 175, I think Andre would fight him. I think Gilberto Ramirez would fight him. I think there's a lot of guys up there that I think Arthur Abraham would fight him possibly. I'm not saying that would be a great fight, but again, these fights at 168 would be definitely more competitive than the ones at 160 in my opinion. So I think that the guys at 160 are avoiding him, but there's guys at 154 like Ruslan De Lara that want to fight him. Demetrius Andrade would fight him, and they're pretty big junior middleweights. They could definitely fight effectively at 160 in my opinion. I think they would make for interesting fights with Triple G, and I think these guys at 168 would fight him too. So I think that this whole notion of keeping him down at 160 to clean out this division to fight guys like Dominic Wade, Billy Joe Saunders would be a good fight, but I think he would destroy Danny Jacobs. I still think he would beat Billy Joe Saunders. I don't think there's anyone at 160 that could give him a good fight. I just don't see it.
What is the big deal about cleaning out the division? I don't think that matters anymore.
Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to you.
It doesn't matter to me. Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
clean out the division.
But that's the narrative that they're trying to sell to the public. They're trying to make it important. So basically, we don't ask him to move up. That's the marketing ploy, I think, and this is my opinion, from Team Triple G. And I respect the hell out of Tom Loeffler. I think he's a great manager, promoter, whatever you want to call him. But I just think that's what they're trying to push out there to the public, that cleaning out a division is so important. Whereas,
is it possible? Sorry to cut you off. Is it possible that they know something about Triple G that the rest of the world doesn't? There is a limitation, and they don't want him going to that A+ level.
Well, in my personal opinion, it's a much better situation to put someone in a fight where he can win, he's going to get paid well, as opposed to putting him in a fight where, yeah, he'll probably win, but we're not 100% sure he's going to win it. You know what I mean? So obviously it's the risk for reward factor, and HBO likes the fact that he's knocking these guys out. He's making for exciting fights. So, they're buying all these fights, and they weren't buying everyone else's fights. Like Andre Ward was trying to get fights, and he got opponents turned down. You know what I mean? Some of these Triple G guys that are fighting on HBO, they're not getting turned down. You know what I mean? With all due respect to William Monroe, I mean, we all knew that wasn't going to be a competitive fight. This Dominic Wade fight, we all knew it wasn't going to be a competitive fight. But other fighters, they're getting their opponents rejected, and it seems like HBO is approving everyone that Triple G is fighting. So, it is what it is. They like this style, and they think that they can do well with it. Triple G does sell out, when he fights, and he gets pretty good ratings on HBO. So I think that's what everyone's concerned with, involved with Triple G.
Well, the guy you say he's never going to fight, Canelo. Well, why don't you think he's going to fight Canelo? For that very reason, that Canelo is a threat?
No, I think Canelo does. I don't think Canelo's people will put him in there with Triple G. I honestly don't. Oh yeah, you asked me if they think Triple G's a threat. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
No,
Yeah.
I actually asked the other
That's
way.
why.
I asked it the other way around. If
Oh, you're asking me the other way around? No, I think I don't think they're concerned about Canelo whatsoever. You know, why do you think? I mean, in my opinion, like why would Canelo's team ask for a catch weight of 155 if Canelo holds the 160-pound title? You know, again, when you, in my opinion, and again, this is just my own humble opinion, when you ask a guy to come down in weight, like when you're the guy requesting a catch weight and you're asking the guy that you're going to be fighting to drop down, that would be like me playing a guy in basketball who's 7 feet tall and saying, "Hey, you can't dunk. You can't dunk on me. You can't shoot the ball past the free throw line." When you're asking for concessions like that, you're basically admitting to the public that, you know, I can't fight this guy on even terms. I need an advantage. So when you ask someone for an advantage like that, and it's not like Triple G's bigger than Canelo. Canelo is actually probably bigger than Triple G. He probably walks around at heavier weight than Triple G. So for them to like ask for this catch weight, it seems to me like it's just a way of avoiding the fight, in my opinion. And again, I will never call any fighter, you know, chicken or a coward. But let's be real. I mean, people know their limitations, and I think fighters know their limitations, and they know who they can beat and they know who they can't beat. And honestly, in my own humble opinion, I don't think Canelo feels 100% confident that he can beat Triple G, because if he did, he would demand the fight, just like he demanded the Lara fight because he didn't feel that Lara was a threat to him. And even Oscar De La Hoya admittedly said, I didn't want him to fight Lara, but he demanded it. So why isn't he demanding a Triple G fight? You know what I mean? So if he really wanted to fight, he would demand them, hey, get me Triple G, and the fight would get made. It's as simple as that. But, you know, Canelo is a pay-per-view star, and he doesn't really need Triple G. Triple G needs Canelo more than, you know, Canelo needs Triple G, in my opinion. And that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, that's how the sport works, you know? It's not how good you are, it's how many butts you can put in the seats, and that's always been that way.
And Mexico's a lot closer than Kazakhstan.
Exactly. Exactly. I'll just say one thing. I mean, eventually the fans are going to speak and they're going to demand this matchup. So I don't know. I don't know if Canelo can be shamed into this matchup, but we'll see. Only time will tell.
No, this is one of these. This will definitely be marinated for all it's worth, and you'll probably see that fight in 3 or 4 years. That's what I would think.
Unfortunately, and that will be when, you know, Canelo. Excuse me. That will be when Triple G is closer to 40. You know, and that's horrible.
That's the whole point.
And that's horrible, isn't it?
But what's more horrible is that Triple G and Canelo are the meal ticket for these promotional companies. They're not going to actually give the fans what they want because they don't want to lose their commodity.
Exactly.
You know, I love boxing, but fuck me, boxing fucking sucks. The politics of boxing just ruin it. Speaking of which, people have talked about Mayweather perhaps coming out of retirement to fight Triple G. Do you see that as a possibility?
I see zero possibility of that happening. I think that Mayweather and Pacquiao, I think there's a good chance that Mayweather and Pacquiao will fight again, either this September or maybe next May. I think it could happen.
If that fight's $100, I'm not going to buy it.
Guess what?
You will.
Sick Joe Habeeb will.
Sick Joe Habeeb.
They got me, man. They know, man. They know I'll buy it.
Well, you sick fucker. Canelo versus Khan. That's the next big one.
Yes.
Who wins this fight and why?
I like Khan for a couple of reasons. More than a couple of reasons. I think Canelo has real trouble with movement, real trouble with speed, real trouble with guys who can keep him at the end of the jab, because I think Canelo's more of a mid-range hooker. I think that's where he's most dangerous, when he's in the mid-range area of the pocket. That's his wheelhouse. And I think if you go in and out on him, you give him movement, you use the ring, I think, you know, he has a hard time, because he's a guy that needs to plant his feet, get his feet set, got to get you right where he wants you, and that's where he's effective. I don't think he's a one-punch knockout guy. I think Marcos Maidana, a guy that Amir Khan fought way back when and hit him with some good shots, and he took them pretty well. I think Marcos Maidana is a harder puncher than Canelo Alvarez. And Floyd Mayweather has disagreed. He fought both of them. But how could he say Canelo's a harder puncher than Maidana when Maidana actually wobbled Mayweather and Canelo never really hit him? So I find that kind of laughable. But I think Khan, a lot of people are saying Khan has to fight a perfect fight. And, you know, Khan's really never been the underdog. So there's a lot of pressure on Khan to fight the perfect fight. I don't think he's ever been in a position where he's had to fight a perfect fight. But even in his shortcomings, even in his losses, he was winning the fights. He was doing well. And then there was just some type of mental letdown. I think there was some sort of complacency there. I think he underestimated his opponents.
He reminds me of Lennox Lewis in that regard.
Yeah. He fights down to the levels of opposition. Yeah, he fights down to the levels of opposition at times. Not to cut you off. But, so
I cut you off.
Yeah, that's okay. It's your show. But, you know, I think that he's in a position where he has to fight a perfect fight, whereas he never was before. And when he's in a fight where he's actually concerned, like he was concerned about Maidana. So he was aware of what was in front of him. And even though there was some rough patches there, he got through it because he was mentally prepared to deal with it, number one. And number two, he brought his A game to that fight. Whereas I don't think he brought his A game to all the other fights. Now, is that an excuse? No. I mean, it is what it is, you know. If you're not at 100% and you know, don't bring your A game and the other guy does, that's on you. But I think he's going to bring his A game. I think you're going to see the best Amir Khan. I don't think that the size difference is going to be as great as everyone says it is. I think Amir Khan will probably be about 4 or 5 pounds lighter the night of the fight, so I don't think that'll matter. And I just think that Khan will just outwork and outspeed Canelo. I don't think that he's going to get caught with that one shot that's going to take him out of there. Because I don't think Canelo has one-punch knockout power. Even when you watched him in that Angulo fight and in that Kirkland fight, he had to put a couple shots together to get those guys out. And you know, Angulo finished the fight on his feet. You know, and even Kirkland, he got a few times. And Khan is not going to allow, you know, Canelo to get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 off. You know, he'll catch one shot and he'll be out of there. He'll know that he can't stay in there. You know, and you look at guys like Cotto, you look at guys like Ruslan De Lara, you look at guys like Austin Trout. All those guys gave Canelo all he could handle. I thought Lara won. I thought the Trout fight was a draw, and I thought Cotto lost 7-5. And I think Khan is faster than all those guys. I think his punch output is greater than all those guys. I think he could take it a step beyond what they did and win the fight, you know, in good fashion. I think he's going to have a great performance. So I expect him to fight a perfect fight. I mean, as perfect as can be in the sport of boxing. And I think he'll do well. And I think you're going to see, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that we're going to see a great Khan on May 7th.
Well, Khan has a lot more to lose.
Exactly.
Where does Khan go from there, assuming he wins?
Oh, I think Cal Brook fight would be a natural. I think it would be a natural. You could throw that fight anywhere in the UK, any big stadium in the UK, and I think that would be, oh my God, that would be insane. That would be insane. I don't think he would stay up there. I don't think he would stay up at middleweight and be a middleweight. You know, he could possibly drop down to 154. Or he could defend that, like, that he could be the new 150-pound middleweight title, you know what I mean?
I was just going to say, he just needs catch weights, yeah.
Yeah, he could fight Cal Brook at 155, so, I mean, that could definitely be a possibility.
You mentioned the UK there. I thought you were living in the UK.
I'm going to explain that, because everyone's like, oh, you know, why is Beeb such a UK cheerleader all of a sudden? And I'm going to tell you how that came about. Because a lot of people that used to listen to Rope-A-Dope Radio, there's a gentleman named Mark, the boxing historian. There's another guy named Davey Boy Essex. You know, there's other people. They were sending me, every week they would send me fights, whether it would be through a BitTorrent, whether they would get it on Sky, and then they would upload it to YouTube. They were sending me fights. and I started watching fight after fight after fight after fight. And then I started seeing the atmosphere, and I started really watching these guys. You know, a guy like Terry Flanagan I watched, you know, who I never would probably watch fight unless someone, you know, sent me a YouTube clip or actually someone sent me a fight. So I give all the credit in the world to all the people who I interact with on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, people who used to be part of, like, you know, interact with us on Rope-A-Dope Radio, people who interact with me on the Boxing Voice radio show. And all these people, you know, really just wanted me to be their voice because they kept sending me fights. And they wanted me to be that, I don't know, maybe the conduit between the United States and the UK for me to show people, you know, that the UK has great fighters. So I just continuously got these fights. I continuously watched these fights, and I became a huge fan because of all of the people in the UK who exposed me to these fights, which I probably never would have been exposed to if it wasn't for them. So hats off to people like Mark the Boxing Historian, Davey Boy Essex, Cameron Gillian, all of these people, you know, who interact with me on the UK. You know, and they helped create the Beeb a little bit. They made, you know, Beeb the UK's adopted son. They helped create that, and I'm very grateful to that as well, because it made me become a bigger boxing fan. It helped expand my knowledge of the sport internationally, worldwide. Instead of this misconception that, hey, boxing's only big in America. Boxing's bigger in the UK. You see those crowds, you see that atmosphere, you see that environment. Anthony Joshua, 400,000 pay-per-view buys, selling out fights in 90 seconds. Come on, who's doing that over here? And, you know, people say, what's 400,000? 400,000 is like the equivalent of like 1.6, 1.5 million here if you want to, you know, compare the population of the UK to the population of the United States. And this was a guy, he fought a guy, Dillian White. They fought for a regional title, and they got that much attention. And then you got a guy like Charles Martin going over there to fight for a title. You know what I mean? It's insane. It's insane.
Since you're such a UK fanboy, as a possible solution to the rift between you and Ness, why don't you do the Boxing Voice UK with you as the host and the Boxing Voice USA with Ness at the helm, and so on?
Well, you know, this was my whole thing. There was just so many people. Like, you had me, you had Mario, you had Enrique Church, you had James Meyer. At one point you had Boxing Voice Vic, you had Ringside Robbie, you had Stuart Little, you had everybody. There was enough people where you could have different shows. Sort of like what Leaving in the Ring does, how they have like the next round on, and then Dave Duenas has his show with Gabriel Montoya. You could create, like the Boxing Voice had the potential. You know, I'm not going to say if Ness was smart, I'm not going to say that, but if Ness was more open-minded, he could have had groups of hosts. You know, he could have had me and him on Sunday. He could have had him and Mario on Thursday. He could have had like a whole, you know, array of shows with different hosts paired together, and you could have had something like that. Because to me, it made no sense to put like 5 or 6 people on the show at one time, and then you add in the callers. It's just like no one's going to have enough time to really, you know, give their input on stuff, because then the show becomes rushed. Then he has the drive-by mode at the end, which everyone hates, whereas you wouldn't have to have that drive-by mode if you only had like 2 hosts on at a time, or possibly 3 tops. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea. You could have had a Boxing Voice UK show. You could have had him and I do it, and you could have possibly grabbed Stuart Little or something. It could have been him, I, and Stuart Little, and we could have had a Boxing Voice. You know, that's a great idea, Russell. But I mean, again, you know, not in so many words. I proposed that to Ness. I was like, there's so many people. Why don't you just group us up into certain days? But for some reason, you know, we all had to be there at once. There had to be all 5, 6 of us who were like the Wu-Tang Clan, you know. We had more members in the Wu-Tang Clan at one point on the show, you know what I mean? I thought it was ridiculous. It's just my opinion.
So, Joe, what's the best fight you've ever seen? Boxing match.
Oh, my God. Well, that Larry Holmes Ken Norton fight, even though I was young, that was an awesome fight. I liked that fight. I liked Ali Foreman. Who else? I actually like the Lucy Chavez Whitaker fight. There's just so many fights that I like. Oh my God, Castillo and Corrales. It's got to be in the top 5 best fights of all time. That's definitely got to be one in the top 5. And then, it was crazy. I hate to say this too, but when Nigel Benn fought Gerald McClellan, unfortunately, I hate to talk about that fight because of what happened at the end. But I thought that was a great fight. That had a lot of ebb and flow to it. There was a lot of action, a lot of drama. And you want to go back to some more UK fights when Chris Eubank fought Nigel Benn. Those were some great fights too. I like those. That was great fights. I'm gonna be honest with you. People look at those Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward fights, and they're like, "Oh, those are great fights." And no disrespect, but when you see guys just pound on each other like that, and you see a lot of the skill go out the window, to me, I give them credit and I respect them for what they did. But to me, I don't think that's a great fight. I think they were just pounding on each other. I think they didn't show a ton of skill. I think they showed a ton of skill in that fight, to be honest with you. So I think a fight like that is just two guys. That's just violence to me. You know what I mean? I don't look at that as a skillful fight, and I can see why some people would like that. But to me, that's just two guys beating the hell out of each other.
I think that was sort of part of the beauty of it, is you had two fighters that didn't possess the skill, so it all came down to heart.
Yeah, and again, that's the thing about boxing. You like what you like. Like me, I think we're all biased. We're all biased to what we like in terms of, like, I may like the counterpuncher. You may like the swarmer. You know what I mean? But the thing about being biased, you still have to be objective. Like, if you favor a certain style, but that style just isn't working on the night, then you got to admit that. You know what I mean? And I think that I'm objective enough to admit that. Some people may not be able to, but I think that's what's important. You know what I mean? Being able to look at something objectively, even though you may not like that specific style, but if it's effective on the night, you gotta acknowledge it. And I think that's huge to acknowledge it.
Who's the best fighter you've ever seen?
That's a tough one. That's a subjective question. My favorite fighter of all times is Sugar Ray Leonard. See, this is how unbiased I am. When Leonard fought Hearns the second time, I thought Hearns won the fight. And even Leonard admitted that he thought Hearns won that fight. So, and then here's another thing too. This is why, I consider myself to be really a fair, honest, unbiased analyst. Leonard's my favorite fighter. I thought he lost the Hearns fight, but the fight was scored a draw. Another thing I criticized when Leonard fought Donnie Lalonde, and he made Donnie Lalonde come down to 168, and they fought for the vacant super middleweight title, the WBC middleweight title, and they fought for Donnie Lalonde's WBC light heavyweight title. I don't think they should, Donnie Lalonde's light heavyweight title should have been on the line. I don't think that should have ever been in the play there. If he was going to fight Donnie Lalonde, then he should have just been for the 168-pound title. Why force a guy, and why win two titles in one night? You know what I mean? I didn't agree with that. And that was one thing I was critical of. I'm not going to say that's going to make me not like Sugar Ray Leonard. It's not going to affect me in terms of having Sugar Ray Leonard be my favorite fighter. But those were two things that I can criticize. I thought he lost the Hearns fight the second time, and I thought that he shouldn't have been able to fight for two titles on the same night, and make Donnie Lalonde come down to 168. I thought it was kind of crazy. You could see that Donnie Lalonde was pretty much dead in there on his feet.
Would Leonard have beaten Mayweather?
Honestly, I say yes, but I also think Mayweather would have a chance to beat Leonard. I think if they fought 10 times, I would say that maybe Leonard would win maybe 6 and Mayweather could win 4. I don't think it's as easy and clear cut as people think. Now, I think if Mayweather fought Hearns, I think Hearns would kill him. Just styles make fights. But I think, Leonard is a little bit different. You know what I mean? He has a different style. Sometimes he'll stay out on the outside, and he won't press. You know what I mean? And he could be sucked into counter punches sometimes. You know what I mean? So I think he would have problems with Mayweather. I don't think it would be an easy fight. Like some people say, oh, Leonard would kill Mayweather. I think he could beat him. I don't think he would kill him.
What about Hagler versus Mayweather?
Does
that somewhat repeat the Leonard fight?
Hagler's a southpaw. He's different. Prime. I don't think he could beat him at middleweight. If the fight was at like junior middleweight, I think he would have a shot. At middleweight, I'd say Hagler would win. If the fight was at junior middleweight, I would favor Mayweather.
Triple G versus Hagler.
Oh, wow. Honestly, this is going to make a lot of people mad, but I think Triple G has a shot. I slightly lean towards Triple G, believe it or not. And I know if you put this up, people are going to assassinate me, but I like Triple G. I think that Triple G is a very, very clever fighter. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I think I think he's kind of a slot. I'm not going to say he's a slick fighter, but when I talked about Triple G in one of my videos, the thing I said about Triple G is he's not a fast fighter, but he's a quick fighter because he knows how to shorten up his punches. He knows how to get inside his opponent's combination. His opponent's open up with a wide shot. He'll shorten his punch up just enough just to get it there before his opponent can land his. And he rolls shots, and while he's rolling shots, he's punching at the same time. He's very crafty. There's a sort of craftiness to Triple G that I think really gets overlooked, and he hits like a mule. Like he's touching guys and he's just hurting them with everything. You know what I mean? He's hurting them with everything. So I think he's a little bigger than Hagler. I think he hits a little bit harder than Hagler. Yeah, I think he had a shot against Hagler. I'd slightly lean towards him, to be honest. Crazy as that may seem.
And to complete the circle, Triple G versus Sugar Ray.
Triple G versus Sugar Ray. I think Ray could beat him. Do you know why? Because I think Triple G is most dangerous when he's in the mid-range to up-close area. I'm not going to say he's totally ineffective from the outside, but he's least effective from the outside. He's least dangerous from the outside compared to being, in the mid-range to up-close area. So I think Ray would be slick enough to just keep out of range and really not get caught flush. And Ray's the type of guy where he would just touch him and just touch him and just touch him and just touch him and just try to pile up points. He would fight a similar fight as to what he fought, against Hagler, and it may be tougher for him, but I think he could probably win. I would favor Ray against Triple G.
Complete topic shift. Who wins the U.S. election this year and why?
Oh my God! You want it? I'm gonna get blasted for this too. I actually think Donald Trump is going to win, and I'll tell you why. This is my theory, and tell me if this makes sense at all. Both of them have very high unfavorable ratings, right? So that means that come November, a lot of people are going to be staying home, or they're going to be writing in someone else's name. And usually when that happens, that favors the Republicans, because it's usually that block of voters, the young voters, who are the ones who stay home, right? And those are the voters that generally vote Democratic. So if those voters stay home and there's not a huge turnout, I think Donald Trump can pull it off. I think it's going to be a close election, but I think he can squeak by. I think he could just squeak by. And I think once once him and Hillary are both nominated and they start going at each other, he's going to pull stuff out that no one else would. He's going to go lower than no one else would. And, he may just really, really run her through the mud, and I think it would do damage to her and turn a lot of people off. He could be perceived as the lesser of two evils come November, believe it or not.
So by that logic, that means that you would favor Bernie Sanders to beat Donald Trump in the general election.
Correct. I don't think anyone would beat Bernie Sanders. I don't think anyone.
Yet he's quite likely not going to be the candidate.
But let's look at that though. I mean, he's getting the votes, but look at the system, the superdelegates. I mean, the superdelegates. I mean, she basically it's like starting off a game with a built-in point spread. I mean, she had all those superdelegates in her pocket before the primary ever started. You know what I mean?
It's like fighting at a catch weight.
Exactly. There was no way he was going to win. I mean, there's no way. They already determined that she was going to be the nominee, the establishment.
And who would win a fight between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in the ring?
In the ring? I think Bernie would squeak by with a 12-round decision. That's hilarious.
If Ness happens to listen to this show, I'm sure if I sent him a message and asked him to, he would, or at least a portion of it. And you had something you wanted to say to him directly, what would you say to Ness?
You know, this is what I would say to Ness. Again, I wish him nothing but the best. I respect what he's done. But, you know, he's got to realize that, you know, you got to respect people who help you. Don't take it for granted that you're getting help, number one. So learn to treat people better. Like, people are doing things for you, you know, free. They're giving you their time for free. Just be a little bit more appreciative of that, number one. And number two, when you say something or you do something and it causes a negative reaction, when you do something bad to somebody or you say something you shouldn't say, own up to that. Admit when you're wrong. It's okay to say, hey, I'm sorry. I've said I'm sorry several times. And I've admitted when I was wrong several times. You know what I mean? So, you know, be a man and just own what you say and stand by what you say. And if you say something wrong, you can always try to make it right. Like own up to the things you do and you say, and deal with the repercussions of what you do and say. And that's going to make you a better person in the long run. That's all. That's all. You know? I hope the boxer's voice, you know, I don't wish anything bad on the boxer's voice. I hope that's his livelihood. I don't want to see him, you know, be out on the streets. So I hope he does well. That's all. It is what it is.
Are you 100% done with the boxing voice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question.
Joe, it's been great having you on the program. I'd like to do it again sometime. We can cover a big fight or whatever you want.
No problem.
Joe Habeeb, thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Have a great night.